All right, so we're going to talk about hierarchy. And hierarchy is two things at once. It's a visual concept, one of the most important ways that we can show visual organization in a document, whether it's a print or screen document. Hierarchy is also an informational concept. It's about organizing information, even if that information is not going to be shown visually. Today we're going to focus on the elements of hierarchy that are visual. How do we represent hierarchy on the page or on the screen? If we take a random group of elements and we don't give them any sense of hierarchy, it's very difficult for our brain to process how they should be grouped. It's also very difficult for us to see where to start. Now, we have a little bit of help because in the West, at least, we have a natural tendency to read from left to right and also from top to bottom. And so we have a bit of an advantage in that all things being equal, our brains are going to start at the top left corner of this, move across to the right, and move down from the top, and try to process the information that way. That's a Western reading pattern. But it still doesn't help us all that much with trying to make decisions about what's important. And that's where hierarchy really shines. When we're trying to decide which pieces of information are important, which pieces I should look at first, which pieces I can save for later, that's where hierarchy is critical. And so we're going to look at some basic ways of using hierarchy in order to organize information to help the reader move through it visually. Parents and children have a relationship, just like they do in a family. Parents tend to be in charge or to have more precedence or to have more importance than children. They're often larger. They are often placed on top of elements that are children. Parent elements also should be, generally speaking, looked at first before children in a visual scheme. So when we work with parents and children, there are a couple of things we can do that make it visually pretty straightforward, at least for a Western reader, to understand them. The first is that parents are almost always placed on top of children visually. So that's one way that the relationship can be seen. If this element is a parent, which would be something like a title or a header or something like that, generally speaking, a parent is placed atop a child element. So that's one way that we can show the parent-child relationship. Two, another way to show it, is that generally speaking, children are placed to the right of parents. So if we see two elements, one to the left and one to the right, generally speaking, the child element is the element to the right. We can combine these two visually to get a fairly common sequence that we see all the time, which is a list. What you'll notice here is the parent is to the top and to the left of the children, thus creating a sense of its parent position over those elements. By doing this, we give people a sense of visual order. The parent is more important. The parent is in charge of the child elements. The parent should be read first. And the child elements are a group for which the parent is in charge. All visual cues that help the reader to process that information. So two ways that we can show that parent-child relationship are one, by placing the parent atop the child, two, by placing the parent to the left of the child, or by combining those two to create an even stronger sense. Now, proximity is a concept, if you've looked at contrast, repetition, and alignment, proximity, one of the core Gestalt principles of visual organization. Parents and children in a hierarchy tend to be close together. So if we want to show a parent-child relationship, we don't want these elements very far apart. We want them as close together as reasonably possible. If we do something like this, incorporating left, right, and top down, we want these child elements reasonably close so that we get that sense of this is a hierarchy, these elements are connected to this element. So proximity is one way visually that we can ensure people get a sense of hierarchy. A second visual cue that we can give people to create a sense of hierarchy is size. If we look at our same set of elements, we have a parent, top left, children, bottom right. We're using proximity to create a close sense of relationship in the hierarchy. But if we use size as well, we can create a stronger sense of who is the parent. We can reinforce that idea. By increasing the size of the parent, keeping the children the same, we create an even stronger sense that the parent is the parent and the children are the children. The hierarchy is strengthened by the use of size as a visual cue. Connecting lines and blocks reinforce our sense of hierarchy by showing literally lines which shape the hierarchy. So here's our parent with our children. We've got left, right, and top, bottom relationships. We don't have much of a size difference here, but that's okay. But connecting lines show a direct link, like this. Literally, we've inserted lines which show a connected relationship among the children and the parent element. That's one approach. The other approach is a block. Often blocks take the form of a border or some other way of mapping out the visual space that the children occupy so that it forms a very strong visual connection to the parent. Whether we use connecting lines or blocks or both, which seems a bit over the top but still workable, in both cases we get a very strong sense of visual connection between the parent and children, as well as a strong sense that the parent is in charge of the children, is the grouping element that combines the children or incorporates the children. Strong visual cues which help a reader hierarchically to process the visual information.